Hi everyone. I want to go ahead and get started, that way I can get you out of here on time. I know being the end of the day, some of you have been here for 2 days, I want to make sure we get a chance to go to the after party, have a good time. So my presentation, it's planning your content strategy in the new SEO landscape. One question I want to ask quickly, who here, raise your hand if you know HubSpot or what HubSpot does. Okay, most, if not everybody, okay, I just don't want to tell people what they already know. My name is Prudente, and I'm a principal channel consultant at HubSpot. So basically I work with our gold, platinum, and diamond level partners who sell HubSpot with their services attached to it. And I was asked to come and speak about the SEO landscape and the new way to think about content. So I'm not going to be talking about the HubSpot tools today. If you were coming for like a HubSpot demo, that's not what today's going to be about. In fact, I'm not going to talk about the HubSpot tool at all. But what I am going to talk about, and what my goal for today is I want to talk about how to craft a content marketing strategy that works both for humans and for search engines. So there's always been this catch-22 of, do I do something that will benefit the search engine and my rank, or do I do what's good for the searcher? And what we're going to talk about is how nowadays we can actually do both. So maybe I should stand closer. So by the end of today's session, what I want you to walk away, I want you to understand the changes in the SEO landscape, talk about content pillars and this new approach to content strategy, and then also how to build out a content resource page. We'll talk about different types of pillar pages, and I'm actually, as an appendix to this, I'm gonna have, because I'm guessing we'll be able to share the slides with you afterwards, it'll have actually how to build out one of these pillar pages step by step. I'm gonna stay high level today, and I'll give you kind of the actual tips on how to build one in the appendix. So, quick question is, how do you approach SEO up until this point? And I was looking for a GIF. I just typed in the word chaos because I thought that was fairly accurate. And this is what came up. And the more I looked at it, the more I liked it for several reasons. One, you see that there are some cars that just zip right through here. This is a laser pointer, isn't it? So you can see that bus that just kind of goes right through with no problems whatsoever. And then you have others that seem to be stopping like every 2 or 3 feet. Similar with SEO, right? You find yourselves going after particular keywords you want to rank for. Sometimes you write a blog post or a resource, and within 2 weeks, you're up on the first page of Google. Sometimes you write a really great piece of content, 2 months later, you still haven't seen any results, kind of inexplicably. The other is that people are getting in each other's way, even though they're going in different directions. So most marketers have experienced the phenomenon where they're trying to rank for a particular keyword, and unfortunately, someone's getting in their way. Someone's on that first page of Google, and you look at that resource or whatever they've written, and it doesn't really fit for that keyword, and it's frustrating. You're like, I'm actually a better fit for this keyword. What are they doing getting in my way? So again, I like this analogy of just trying to get through a crowded traffic stop. What we're going to talk about now is how SEO has changed over the past few years. So a couple of things that have happened. Now, if we go back to 2013, one of the biggest changes to Google's algorithm is the Hummingbird update. And what they did here is they made it much easier for it to recognize searcher intent when you put in something. I remember when I would go and search in Google, if I didn't put it in exactly the way Google wanted me to, I would get that like no search results viable. Now you rarely ever get that with Google. They are better now at like cutting through what you're looking at to understand the intent behind it. The next update, and probably the more important one, was the Rank Brain update. And this is where they started adding in some AI machine learning to the Google algorithm. And they said, you know, we're not even going to really worry about exact matches anymore. We can cut through and see what the subject matter is here and surface the best results. I'll give an example. If I type in green cleaning supplies or eco-friendly cleaning supplies, those are 2 different keywords, but now Google is much better at just cutting through both of those terms and knowing exactly what you're searching for. The problem is these updates happened, but most people didn't update their content strategy to match these changes in Google's algorithm. So we find ourselves still in that landscape of I need to make sure I'm thinking about exact match keywords. I need to make sure, now not that people are keyword stuffing anymore, but I need to put my keyword in the 5 exact places. I need to put it on the alt image text. I need to make sure I have all of those things for the exact match keyword. And what we're seeing with these changes is that's not what Google wants, and that's not what's good for the searcher or good for search engines. So we talked about how search engines have changed, but how have searchers changed? So a couple things. One, the rise of mobile search is huge. Mobile search overtook desktop search back in 2015, I believe, but now it has a share of about 64% of search is done on mobile. The other that comes with that is voice search. I believe it's between 16 and 20% in the past year of all searches done on mobile are done via voice search. If you think about what that does to search, it actually brings out the importance of long tail keywords, because people are now searching the way they talk, right? And that's why the natural language processing was so important to Google. I'm not gonna just go to Google and type in inbound marketing or cheeseburger, right? I'm gonna go into my mobile device, or I'm gonna say, hey Alexa, what is the best cheeseburger in Youngstown, Ohio? Right? That's the way now people are doing searches. And we need to have a content strategy that can both solve for that and what we talked about with the search engine, where it can actually cut through those and understand what topic you're looking through in that search. Now, just a couple of tips on what top SEO firms are doing with this change in landscape. Number one, they've moved away from optimizing around exact match keywords. And I underline in bold only to say that they'll still do that. If they're writing a blog post, it's not that they're not going to kind of identify one keyword that they're looking at. They're instead focusing on producing, instead of quantity over quality, they're focusing on less content, but the content that they do create is longer, more semantically rich, and full of different topics and keywords around a specific topic. The other one, which is a big one, especially if you have a large website, is an SEO-friendly site architecture. Flat site architecture, as opposed to having to do a lot of clicks. Again, you don't want Google to have to do a lot of searching around your website. It's bad for the searcher and it's bad for the search engine. And then lastly, which is probably the most overlooked of all four of these, is aggressive promotion of content nowadays. Again, HubSpot, we were big proponents of this, right? Was quantity over quality, especially when we first started. And we know that because that's where search engines were when we first started our company, was write 2, 3, 4 blog posts a week, just crank it out, and that's how you build organic search. But then we also didn't talk much about how you promote that content. But now we're talking about promoting content. I'll come back to this, but we need to be spending a lot more time promoting content, especially if we're spending a lot more time and effort on the content that we do create. So the way we now need to think about content and how we organize it is a little bit different than before. Before, what we would do is we would say, let's take 200 keywords that have a high search volume and a low difficulty score that kind of fit for our industry, and we're gonna blog about them. That was the content strategy before, right? It didn't really have a focus. It really just said, does it match our persona / business? And we were just gonna write about it. Now, I'm not gonna say that the idea of rank is something that you shouldn't think of, because rank is an excellent indicator of how well you're doing in search engine optimization. But rank cannot be anymore the only thing you're looking at. Because if you're just thinking about rank, you're not looking at the metrics that really matter. What's the traffic that's coming from this piece of content that we're writing? How many leads are we getting from this piece of content? And how many of those leads are turning into customers? Who cares if you're ranking number 1 versus number 3 if that number 3 piece of content is generating you 4 times as much revenue at the end of the day? You know where you should be spending your time and effort. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But what we need to think about now is creating a series of pillars for our content strategy. Now, I chose this image purposefully as well because there's not many of them. There's, 2, 4, 6, 7 here. I would say for most businesses should have between 3 and 7 pillars for their business, right? And obviously, walking away from today, you should focus on 1 pillar. But what those pillars are is it's a foundation for your content plan that you're gonna organize everything around. And I'm gonna give examples. I'll bring up some different types of examples, and I'll talk about more what this means. So, what this content pillar is, or you can call it a pillar page. People may have heard this as a 10x page, resource page. It's a website page, and notice I call it a website page and not a blog page, that covers a topic in depth and is linked to a cluster of relevant content. Now, that relevant content that you're linking to, that's probably more likely gonna be your blog content, supporting content. So I'll give an example of this, and I'll give it to you kind of in this graphic form, and then we'll dive into some examples and different ways to do this. So let's take a core topic. Let's take the term sales qualification. Let's say maybe you're a business coaching or sales coaching type of organization, and sales qualification is going to be one of your pillars because a lot of people are searching for that. Now, when you ask the question, well, what should this term be? A couple things to think of. In terms of the high competition, high cost versus, low competition, what we want to do is we don't want to pick those broad terms that everybody is searching for. We want a little bit more specificity than that. So in this example here, what we would pick is something like this, men's shoes to go after. So not necessarily this specific, not this broad, something in the 2 to 3 word to build our pillar around. So again, we've chosen that idea of sales qualification. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say, here's our subtopic content around there. Now, what you might notice about this subtopic content is it doesn't even have the word sales qualification in there. Again, don't worry so much anymore about, oh, my supporting content needs to have different variations of sales qualification. It doesn't anymore. Remember, Google is smart enough to see these different things and understand. Now, you're still going to use probably in these posts the word sales, the word qualification, that term sales qualification in there somewhere. Google is smart enough to read all of this and understand that it's the same topic. It's the same kind of information you have out there. And the last big step, once we have a big piece of content in the middle surrounded by this supporting subtopic content, is we're going to connect it together with hyperlinks back and forth to one another. Now, this is where I, again, return to, we want to do what's good for the searcher and what's good for the search engine. Let's think of how somebody might find your website via one of these blog posts, and then they see a link to a larger piece of content, this sales qualification piece of pillar content, that shows them all these other resources that maybe they didn't even know that they needed or wanted. It's a good experience for the searcher. And then thinking about the search engine, when Google crawls your pages, it's going to see all these links. And what we're building is a rising tide lifts all boats type of effect. As these different posts begin to get more authority, begin to get more traffic, it's going to help all the other posts interconnected with one another. So having that really tight hyperlinking structure on your website between your content is really, really important. So one point I wanted to make as we talk about these pillar pages is we now live in a world where people expect free content. Some industries are behind or in front of others in terms of content marketing, but for the most part, if you're not willing to give content for free anymore, they'll go find it somewhere else. Now, that's a little scary, and HubSpot has built its business, for almost everyone here said they know HubSpot, on the traditional landing page with a form on it that takes you to a thank you page. Well, now we have more types of conversions than ever before with things like lead flows and different ways to do it. But with these pillar pages, what we're actually going to do is we're going to ungate this content and we're going to give it for free. Now, this is the point in the presentation that I've done a couple times where people stop me and they're like, well, what do you mean ungated content? Like, I have been taught that if I'm going to give someone a valuable piece of content, they need to give me their information. What I mean by ungated content is not that we wouldn't want them to download it and take it with them, but if they don't want to download it and take it with them, we should still allow them to preview and read that text for free. And I'll show you what I mean by that. And I want to talk about the advantages of ungating this content, because again, this is where I get a little bit of pushback from people and say this will never work. Well, I'll tell you why it does. One, when you put a really great piece of content behind a form, you get 0 organic traffic benefits from it. Google can't crawl it, and you're not getting any authority to your website. Number 2, it actually increases the quality of the conversions you do get. Think about the idea, we call it like the bookstore effect. When you're able to go into a bookstore and read a sample of it, you get an idea of whether I like it or not, whether it's useful to me or whether I think this is going to be a good book. In which case, I'm going to buy that book or I'm going to fill out that form and take it with me. Because we actually did a study that showed that 90% of people actually prefer to take things with them, read it as a PDF, as opposed to on just a website page. So with that said, imagine your email marketing efforts after they've downloaded this piece of content when they've self-selected to actually download it. They got to read the first chapter, the introduction, versus somebody who fills it out on a 3-sentence value proposition you had on a landing page, then they get that content and they're like, oh, this is not what I thought it was, or this is not useful to me. Do you really think they're going to open any of your further emails? Probably not. So what you'd actually see from ungating content is you're going to see an increase in email opens, things like that. And then the last, it just solves for the person visiting your page. Like I mentioned, people will go somewhere else if they can't get your content for free. They'll find a way to get it for free. We're continually going into a world where people don't want to give their information, especially at the top of the funnel, right? Maybe at the bottom when they expect to get a call for a demo or a consultation, but people want that more awareness stage, research. They want it for free at this point. So I mentioned this stat before. So I want to talk about 2 types of pillar page. I'm actually going to show some examples and what their format is like. So the first is the resource pillar page. Now, I mentioned that these are ungated, right, pieces of content available for download. So it's almost like taking a premium ebook and ungating it. Now, that's not the only type of pillar page. In fact, a resource pillar page is mostly going to actually have outbound links to other resources. And the whole reason that this type of pillar page exists is that so somebody bookmarks it, comes back to your site over and over again, and eventually kind of interacts with your company for some reason. And I'll show you an example of this. So this is a company called Help Scout, and they have a piece of pillar content called Customer Acquisition Strategies for Entrepreneurs. And again, there's no download on this, so this is an ungated free resource for someone. They don't expect someone to download this because there's not a lot of content that they wrote. In fact, if you look at things like one of the sections is content marketing, it's just links to different things, right? Search engine optimization, links. So if you ask the question, like, why would I download this? You wouldn't. You would bookmark it and come back over and over. If I'm a startup, I'm looking for resources. I'm maybe a business rep or someone marketing in a startup. This might be a really good resource for me to come back to over and over again. But then again, you ask the question, well, what's the advantage to Help Scout? Okay, from an SEO standpoint, I can see the advantage. Has people coming back over and over again, good for domain authority. But then I actually went into Help Scout and said, like, what do they actually do? Like, what is Help Scout? Okay, their product is they make a web-based help desk for teams that insist on a delightful customer experience. So think about that experience of somebody, if I go to this page, I would bookmark this. They're helping me find my customers, right? This is all about customer acquisition. Well, what a coincidence that Help Scout has a product to help once you get those customers. Once you've acquired them, they can help you out with that. So they've created a content strategy here, a piece of pillar content to have you coming back over and over, and then it makes sense to work with them once you accomplish what you're trying to accomplish with that pillar page. So that's one example, is that bookmarkable resource, that resource pillar page. The second is the one that's more common, the one people see, and the one that is more for lead generation. And that's the 10x content pillar page. Some people call it skyscraper content. There's a bunch of different names. HubSpot does not claim like we invented this idea. It's just we're more aligning with it ideologically. So this is mostly your own content. This is something you wrote. Again, think of this as a premium ebook you've written. But again, instead of just putting it behind a form and on a landing page, you're going to make it a website page that someone can view. So it's going to deep dive on a core topic. And let's look at an example. I'm not going to use this one, although you can come to this one. This is Moz's Beginner Guide to SEO. I don't know if anyone's ever seen it before. It's an excellent example of a 10x pillar page. But the one I want to look at is this one from a company called Sales Hub. And what they've done here is they've created a sales enablement pillar page. 6 big sections. I love, they have this download as a PDF, which when I click on, now if I want to take this with me as a PDF, I can download it, take it with me, read it whenever I want, on demand. But as I scroll down, I can read that piece of content. What you'll also notice is throughout that content, they have other downloads. So a smaller guide on what is sales enablement, 8 sales enablement statistics you can't ignore. So this is going to be optimized for conversions. One at the very top to download it as a PDF. But as you go through, if you have kind of tangent topics that you're talking about in that pillar page, you can have other downloads as well. So again, I really like this too because they have a progress bar at the top, they have a table of contents that you can go back to the top or the bottom. They're doing a really good job of designing this pillar page. It's a really good user experience as well as being a great, rich SEO type page for Google to crawl. They actually right now, they just cracked the first page of Google for the term sales enablement. So again, I'm not going to go into this really deeply because in the appendix I actually have a guide on how to reverse engineer build one of these pages. What I want to just show is kind of the pages, the idea for this that I want to get at in creating a piece of pillar content. So walking away from today, you shouldn't be like, all right, we need to scrap everything we've ever done in content marketing and start over. In fact, what you should do is you should take your content, your blog posts, things like that, and you should say, are there any kind of core topics that we've already identified, that we've already started? If so, like maybe only what we really have to do is create that pillar page and we can just link to all of that blog content around it. Or if you have a premium ebook already written, maybe the step is, all right, we just need to ungate this on a pillar page and we just need to write some more blog posts and link back and forth to them to create that really good linking architecture on our website. So I want to show a couple of examples, again, just results people have seen by this. Again, I've shown examples, but I want to talk results as well. So this first one, they created a 10x piece of pillar content. It's a company called Edema. So they help you take unstructured text data and be able to do analytics on it. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to look at this core topic of text analysis, broad term, 2 words long. So they took text analysis. What they did is they broke out into these subcategories. So these are the blog posts that they wrote around these type of keywords. Again, you'll see text analysis in a couple of them, but not all of them. Now, a couple of things on layout tips. These are things that they did, and again, hopefully you guys can get this as a resource afterwards, but this kind of walks through ways I would think about laying these out. And I don't want to go into their page, I don't want to waste that time, but these are some things to think about as you're laying them out. But what they said is they were receiving 4 times as many leads once this got going. Because again, people always ask the question, well, if I'm giving it away for free, doesn't that disincentivize people to download it and take it with them? The answer is no. If they find it valuable, they're going to download it and take it with them. And also the SEO benefits that you're getting from it are going to increase your traffic. So the net amount of leads that you're going to get from this is actually going to increase over time. It's not going to decrease. So after you've created a pillar page, you don't set it and forget it. This is a living, breathing type of piece of content. So it's always under construction if you want it to really like hum and perform at a high level. So 4 things that you can do in order to improve it. Right off the bat, you may not have other smaller offers as downloads. That's fine. Over time, you might sprinkle in those relevant content offers. You also may want to put in other forms of media. I love that the Sales Hub one starts with a video. I think that's a great way to start a piece of pillar content, a minute and a half long to just introduce it. Maybe you have some social posts throughout it, diagrams, just different forms of media. Put a heat map on that pillar page. Most people are doing for their website pages anyway. It'll show you where people are scrolling. It'll show you where people are going. You can understand the performance and understand where to put those, sprinkle in those relevant content offers as well. And then eventually you can grow a subtopic off of that main pillar page into its own pillar. If over time you notice that's getting a lot of search volume for you, one of the subtopics, build it out into its own pillar page. So another example, and this is my favorite one just because of the results are insane. Townsend Security, full-time security provider. Now, this is what their marketing dashboard looked like. Okay, so you can see they've been using HubSpot for quite a long time, and I'm not interested about that they're using HubSpot, but just the analytics. So you can see like humming along 2011, 2012, they were following the HubSpot methodology of like 3 blog posts a week, just churning out the content. And that was working, right? Not a problem. Saw a dip around 2013 when that Hummingbird update came. And then when the RankBrain update came, it leveled off and started to really fall. And the reason it fell, they found out, was because there was a competitor that was moving into the space as well and was starting to siphon off some of their traffic. So they needed to do something. Not only was their content not doing the trick because it was using the old content strategy, they had a competitor moving into the market, so they needed to do something. So they decided to go all in and make an ungated, comprehensive guide with the term encryption key management. They were like, if we're gonna help our business, we need to be the thought leader in this space. This is gonna be our pillar. So they did that. You can see here, again, right away you can download it and take it with you. They have shortcuts to different sections if I want to. They have a video right off the bat, which I think that's great. They also have really good diagrams. It's a really, really good resource. Now, I say that, I know nothing about encryption key management, so take my idea with a grain of salt, but I'll let the results speak for themselves over time, right? You can see the download they have sprinkled in here. Okay, so this is about where they started that pillar page, and this is what happened with their traffic, okay? So in 40% increase in organic traffic in less than 3 months, that was number one, right? It continued to climb over time, and it just continues to get better and better as time goes on. And probably the best thing about this, 63% of people who visited that content pillar downloaded the guide. So 63% of people that view that page as a resource download it and take it with them. If you had landing pages that had a conversion rate of 63%, that would be pretty phenomenal. They now have the #1 listing on Google for the term encryption key management. And this is my favorite, is the CEO has stepped up. When he saw this happen, he basically said, I need to create the next pillar page because I want to be the thought leader. I kind of want it to be focused around me. It helped them make it a business-wide initiative around content because they saw this jump and they saw themselves getting in front of the industry. And what they actually did next is they actually ended up making SQL server encryption. Again, something, if I don't know encryption key management, I definitely don't know what SQL server encryption is, but they saw the search volume and they saw that they were getting a lot of results to that subtopic on that blog, so they built out a new pillar page associated with it as well, with its own subtopics. So one thing I said I would come back to, so if we're creating these pieces of content, you can imagine, people always ask, what's the amount of time it takes to build one of these? It takes about the amount of time it takes to build a really good, solid 10-chapter ebook, right? You're basically creating one of those just on your website. That takes a lot of time to do really well. But people always say, what about promotion? And again, in the old world of let's just write 3-4 blog posts a month, you didn't do anything with those blog posts. You just let, over time, Google crawl your website, see this content, find good ones. Some of them would catch fire, and that would be that. Now we need to promote. If we're going to be spending this time, we need to be promoting. People say a good content production to promotion rate is about 50-50. The best SEOs right now are actually spending 20% of their time, whatever time they're spending producing content, they're spending 4 times as much actually promoting that content and putting efforts behind getting it in front of other people. All right? Now, people always ask, well, what does that look like? I have a checklist here that, again, you guys can take a look at with short-term tactics with a piece of content when you first put it out there, and longer-term tactics for how you can promote content after you've put it out there. I'll leave it up there for, all right. So it helps to solve some content creation problems, these pillars, because it really, as opposed to just seeing these results as what it does, it helps you think long term as opposed to short term and like, all right, what's our next blog post going to be about? What's our next blog post going to be about? It helps you really organize your thinking. It provides a framework, right, of here are our 3, 4, 5 pillars that we want to be known for, so that we know that every blog post we write is going to be around one of those pillars, right? Again, it gives direction for this content strategy, and my favorite, it solves for the search engine and the searcher. We are now in a world where the overlap between what is good for the searcher and good for the search engine is almost 100% overlapped. I'm not going to say 100% yet, but Google is getting better at knowing what's good for the searcher. Right? So my final thought is just how to do this when you leave. Because again, people walk away and they say, where do I start? This seems overwhelming. How do I create 4, 5, 6, 7 pillars? It's to start with one, right? Start with one pillar, one idea, come up with that baseline. And then you'll understand, okay, what subtopics do we need or do we already have? You'll connect those together and build your first pillar page. And then over time, you'll continue to create more content to link to it. You'll create your second piece of pillar content. And at the end of the day, this is what your content strategy will now look like. So it'll have a framework. You'll have pieces that fit together that are either, again, branching off or their own separate subtopics and pillar pages. Thank you, guys. Any questions? No questions. All right. I know it's the last session, so. Yeah? All right. If there are no questions, then thank you, guys. I really appreciate your time.